our next speaker. She is a sex educator. She runs her own club. She is a professional dominatrix. And she also spins fire. And her name is Anastasia Krylov.
Yeah, well done. Thrill and excitement as I plug in my computer. You paid for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Okay, so is this wired into a sound system? I can't tell. Can you all hear me?
You're not next to
Okay, I need to use both mics, okay. You don't say. Okay, so, view, slideshow. Oh yeah. All right, hi everybody. Hello everyone, mic check. Excellent. My name is Anastasia, and you can see the name of my talk up there, The Future of Sex and Love, Transcending the Myth of Normativity. Now, before I get into what the myth of normativity is and what the word normativity even means, what I want you to know is that, well, okay, before I go there, the reason for my talk, the why of my talk is, I know that as transhumanists, we are all about being deliberate in our actions and about seizing control of our lives and using science and technology to improve not only our quality of life, but ourselves as people. And I want to apply that same standard of deliberation and informed decision-making to the way we navigate sexual and romantic spaces. Because I don't see us doing that just yet, just as well as I would like us to see us doing that. So, that is the purpose, the goal of my talk. So like I said, before I get to that, what I want you to keep in mind is that this is a talk about sex positivity, and or rather, the philosophy underlying the talk is sex positivity. And what is sex positivity? Well, I defined it for you up there, the radical belief that what consenting adults do for fun and pleasure is neither shameful nor harmful. And this is a really important concept, and you might ask, well, why is this an important concept? Well, sex positivity affects us as a society, and I wanted to tell you guys about The Origin of Love and Violence, which was a paper written by a man named James W. Prescott in 1996, let's see that. And James Prescott did a lot of studies of cultures, and he found that as humans, our society tends to gravitate either towards pleasure or towards violence. And we make that decision we direct that flow based on how we raise our children. And one of the two main predictors that Prescott found of whether a society gravitates towards pleasure or towards violence was how we treat our children, our infants, how much affection we give them, how much physical touch we engage in, whether or not we punish them, and acceptance of adolescent and premarital sexuality. So when we as a society condemn people who have extramarital sex, condemn children's sexuality, when we arrest teenagers and charge them with production and distribution of child pornography because they were sexting, that doesn't improve our society as a whole. That sends us to the shitter. And these sort of violent things, they're correlated with a lot of nastiness. So sex positivity is really important. Acceptance of a variety of sexualities is really important. So as you can see, the first norm, that, no, that, stop, escape, no, fuck. Okay, no, escape, fuck off, stop, it's possessed, okay. So I put this thing on a timer because I'll talk forever if I, all right, it's just going. We're blowing through these. I'll talk forever if you let me. So I put these on a timer, so sometimes my slides will interrupt me, and when they do that, I'll say, oh, well, enough about that, and we'll move on. So if you have questions, then we can get to that later.
At you when you have 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. thank you. It's considerate of you. Right, slideshow. Right, so on to the myths of normativity. So what is the first, the myth of normativity is that there is a normal way to be sexual and then there's an abnormal way to be sexual. Now, the first one, and it has three main aspects. So the first one is heteronormativity. You might not know the word, but you know what it is. Heteronormativity is treating heterosexuality as normal and everything else as deviant. It relies on the alignment of sex and gender identity, like biological sex, gender identity, gender performance, and sexual orientation into two separate, opposite, non-overlapping categories. And this is really detrimental to us as, obviously it leads to, bullying of gay kids and high suicide among queer and trans people and so on and so forth. But it's detrimental to our society as a whole, towards every single member of society, because it shoves us into these really restrictive gender roles, which tell us a lot of things that aren't very nice, like girls suck at math, and the only emotion that it's okay for men to display is anger, because that's a strong sort of emotion. And this is this is detrimental towards every single person in the room. So stop. so fight against it. And and you might say, well, how heteronormative are we as a society? Well, first of all, homosexuality was only taken out of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the thing that shrinks use to tell you that you're crazy. It was taken out of there in 1973. That's recent. There are a bunch of people that are around now that were born way before that time. So that's really recent in our lifetimes. And the fact that coming out of the closet is still a thing that happens. The fact that everybody assumes that you're heterosexual and cisgender unless you tell them otherwise. So it's prevalent, it's damaging. So how do we fight against heteronormativity? How do we really convince people that this is something that, what is the benefit of fighting against heteronormativity? Well, first of all, it'll give us lower suicide rates, which is important. People killing themselves generally. So it'll lower suicide rates amongst trans and queer folk who are disproportionately affected by bullying and job discrimination and wage discrimination and all that kind of thing. It'll also lower the suicide rate among teenage boys. Teenage boys kill themselves at a really incredible rate, like straight cisgendered ones, as well as the queer ones, at just an incredible rate, because they are in this really oppressive society which vilifies their sexuality and which again tells them that showing any kind of emotion besides anger is a sign of weakness. So lower suicide rates. If we destigmatize same-sex unions, it's going to be amazing for the economy. People are going to get married. There's going to be less homeless people. There's going to be less people out of jobs, because job discrimination is a thing that affects those demographics. And more children. There will be less children on the street. There will be less children in shelters, because they will all be getting adopted by all of the gay couples that can now adopt legally everywhere. Yay! And some skeptics might say, well, we don't really know the effects of same-sex unions on child development, like growing up in same-sex households on child development. Well, there is a really cool study that has been going on for 24 years called the NNLFS for short, and that stands for National Longitudinal Lesbian Family Survey, I think. I don't know, Google it. And they have been following lesbian couples who have kids for 24 years, and they found that their kids are not only doing fabulous and totally psychologically normal, but they also don't, they also get abused at staggeringly lower rates. So, fighting against heteronormativity. Okay, so the second aspect of the myth of normativity is that everybody is vanilla and that kink is bad and wrong. So the kink is, sadism and masochism are still in the DSM-4. I don't know if they're in the 5th one. You can Google it. I'm really not sure, but they're still considered mental disorders. And this has real consequences, because there are many cases of people, being outed as kinky and as a consequence losing their job, losing custody of their kids, being ostracized by society in general. So this is, kink phobia is a thing. It affects our communities. And a lot of times, even if it's not losing your job, like it's still seen as evidence that there's something wrong with you, that you were molested as a child or what have you. And it's delegitimized that way a lot, and it's oftentimes conflated with violence. So there are people who get arrested for practicing kink. There's a series of laws on the East Coast that was created to deal with cases of domestic abuse that basically state you can't consent to abuse. So what would happen is a cop would show up, a domestic dispute, and try to arrest the abuser, and the victim, because the victim is usually married to the abuser, would say, no, it's okay, I consented to it, I let him punch me in the face. And so cops got really sick of this, and they were like, you know what, you can't consent to abuse. But these days, which was great at the time, but these days it's used to arrest and harass people who are practicing consensual super fun kink. So that's bad. So, benefits of BDSM. I'm not urging you all to run out and buy like a latex catsuit right now, by the way. I'm just telling you this is why we should be accepting of kink, if not try it ourselves. So, first of all, what is BDSM? Well, BDSM is actually a collapsed abbreviation. The full one is BDDSSM. But that sounded stupid, so we changed it. Now, BDDSSM stands for bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadism and masochism. And, and kink encompasses not only BDSM, but also fetishes, so foot fetishes, latex fetishes, all that. And there's something kind of cool about fetishes, is they allow you to have a sexual experience without exposing yourself to dangerous STIs that make your genitals turn green and fall off. So, and how do we know this? Okay, so I don't know how this works because I am not that much of a scientist. I'm good at research. But we have found through studies that were published in the Psychological Report, number 83, blah, 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 that's the source. By the way, if I forget to source something, come up to me after the talk. So, so there were studies done that looked at foot fetishes, and they looked at STI outbreaks, and they found that when there were major STI outbreaks, like major, like on a bubonic plague sort of scale of STI outbreaks, foot fetishes seemingly magically just shot up through the roof. And this is cool, people can get off, and I mean, nothing's gonna stop people from fucking. I mean, there are countries where people get executed for extramarital sex. Nothing is gonna stop people from fucking and reproducing. But if you can get off to a nice pair of feet, then you don't have to go sticking your dick wherever, and it's less likely to fall off. And another cool, and on a neurochemical level, when you do kink, when you experience pain, it releases beta endorphin. That's that huge fucking thing right there. That's a beta endorphin. And beta endorphins have, this is what's responsible for runner's high. So I'm sure you all know exercise nuts that are like addicted to jogging. This is super addictive, and it makes you feel really good because it bonds to your opiate receptors. So it's basically your body producing opium on its own. Yeah. And this is something that gets released when you participate in a kink scene. So it's good for you, and it gets your blood up, and it also allows practice of BDSM, whether it be indulgence in fetishes or doing your own exploration. One of the cool functionalities of it is that it's sort of a rabbit hole, and you can just keep going and keep finding new things and keep experimenting sexually, which is super important, and I will tell you why later when we get to more brain chemical things. I never thought I'd get ahead of my slides. But yeah, beta endorphins, super cool. 80 times stronger than morphine. And emotionally, when you're doing a kink thing that releases beta endorphins, it doesn't just feel good, it's also a cathartic sort of experience. It lets you cry, it lets you let go emotionally, which is really important because we live in a society that tells us that crying is a sign of weakness. So, and there have been studies done that found that one of the reasons that men commit suicide at such a higher rate than women is because men have to hold in all of their emotions. They can't cry, and women can. So crying is actually good for you. Tell your friends. Anyway, moving on. The failure of compulsive monogamy. By the way, I'm sure there are monogamous people in the crowd. I'm sure you're all lovely. I am not ragging on monogamy as a whole. If you choose to be monogamous and you find that that's what's best for you, more power to you. I'll be at your wedding. I am raging against compulsive monogamy, the belief that monogamy is the one true way. So, that chart up there shows the findings from a survey that was done of people who are married in presumably monogamous marriages, and asking them about their infidelity rates. Now, the infidelity rates are actually kind of lower than what you would expect, considering that half of all marriages end in divorce. But you notice something interesting. So obviously, the happier people get in their relationship, the less they cheat, right? Okay, that seems reasonable. But even people who report that they're happy still cheat at like a 27% rate. The people who report that they're extremely happy, best relationship of their life, no regret about the marriage, oh my God, this is wonderful, they still cheat at a 10% rate. 1 in 10, that's huge. 1 in 10 is the incidence of homosexuality in a regular population. It's enormous. So if 1 in 10 people who are super happy in their relationship cheat, what does that tell you? It tells you that monogamy might not be right for everyone. It tells you that monogamy is so hard. And by the way, most marriages most breakups and divorces that happen because of infidelity. Like, that's an incredibly common cause for breakups. So when you are happy in your relationship, you're still willing to risk it for this thing, I mean, maybe you're kind of hardwired with this thing. Consider it. Perfect. So more failures of compulsive monogamy. Why else does it suck? Okay, so first of all, when I say that it's not what that people are hardwired to seek out multiple partners, well, what does that mean? Okay, well, so first of all, those countries where you get killed for having premarital sex, you also get killed there for having extramarital sex, for cheating on people, and people still do it. So clearly pretty hardwired. And this sounds like just sort of like polymasturbation, like, yeah, we're hardwired for it, it's natural. But there is physical evidence in our bodies, millions of years of evolution, that when you look at it, you go, wow, we couldn't possibly be monogamous. So first of all, we have ridiculous genitalia. Everyone in the room that has a penis, you're gonna love hearing this. Your cock is huge! If you look at other primates, especially the great apes, who we're closest to, chimps, bonobos, so on and so forth, their genitals tend to not be as big as ours. We also have external testicles, which, I mean, testes are kind of important, and I'm sure you have heard by now that they're kind of sensitive. So why would you have them dangling around out here? It doesn't make sense. Well, the reason is because we have a lot of sex, and we have sex for pleasure. When you see, there's, that song Bad Touch, let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. Don't do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. The way that animals have sex is for procreation. So if you have sex like an animal, that means that you fuck like once like every couple of years when you're ovulating. Don't have sex like an animal. So monogamy is not found in any social primates. So primates that live in groups, none of them are monogamous. And also, ladies, we have ladies have multiple orgasms. Why is that? It's for group sex. It's for orgies. It's for having sex with lots and lots of dudes, so nobody's sure if the baby is his, because Maury wasn't around back then. Jerry Springer was around back then. And if you don't know if the kid is yours, then you're going to try to take care of it because it might be yours. And it also romanticizes jealousy, which is bad. Moving on. Ethical non-monogamy. Okay, so what are the benefits of ethical non-monogamy? So there was a paper published by Weitzman who looked at a bunch of different studies, and he found not only that psychologists think that we're crazy, but that psychologically we're pretty standard. We we tend to be a little bit more creative, we communicate a bit better, we know ourselves a little bit more. But we're definitely not like fucked up and deviant. So benefits of non-monogamy. There's a lot of interconnectivity that you get in your life when you're non-monogamous. It's really, one of the ways that abusers function is by isolating their victim from the rest of the world. And that's really hard to do to someone who's non-monogamous, because you can isolate somebody from their friends. It's really hard to isolate someone from their partners. It leads to self-awareness, self-discovery, yes, good. Compersion. Compersion is that word up there that would be underlined in red if this wasn't a PowerPoint. Because the dictionary doesn't know it yet, but compersion is a word that non-monogamists invented, and it's known as the opposite of jealousy, which implies that you can either feel compersion or jealousy, which is not true, you can feel both. But compersion is a sense of joy and happiness that you get from knowing that your partner is out there having fun and bonding with someone romantically and sexually. Compersion. Let's see. Those studies by Weitzman also, there were a couple of different cultures that he looked at, and he found that they raise kids communally when they're non-monogamous, which is awesome and helpful. Right, what is love? So I'm not gonna talk philosophy right now. We're done with the sociological part, and now we're moving into the chemistry part. So, spoiler, love is brain chemicals. I know it sounds anticlimactic. Climactic, get it? I'm here all the week. No, goddamn. God forbid. Come on, PowerPoint. Work with me here. Right, so brain chemicals, and I'm about to illustrate why it's important to have a diversity of sexual experiences, which if you explore BDSM and you consider and explore non-monogamy, you are going to get no shortage of, but you do not necessarily have to do either one of those things to have novel sexual experiences. Excellent. Norepinephrine is the first chemical I'm going to talk about. A lot of you are saying, no, it should be dopamine. We're getting to dopamine. It's at the end, I'm saving the best for last. So norepinephrine, what the fuck is norepinephrine? Norepinephrine is released when we have a crush. Like, you know that trope, their eyes met from across the room, and tunnel vision, I can only see the one, she is the light of my life. That's norepinephrine. It makes you focus, it gives you energy, which means that if you're having norepinephrine in your system, and you're kind of exhausted, and the person that you're focused on is like, hey there, sailor. Suddenly, you have the energy for boning. It's also caffeine-like, and too much of this makes you jittery and crazy. Speaking of which, I think I may have had too much caffeine. Now that I think about it. Oops. So anyway, yeah, too much of any brain chemical tends to be bad, and I'll illustrate that later. Serotonin. What is serotonin? Serotonin makes you happy and it makes you sleepy, which is why after you have sex, you fall asleep. And it is released after orgasm. There's a lot of like gender essentialist studies that say, oh, women release serotonin and men don't, and that's why women have feelings, or whatever. That's horseshit. Everybody releases serotonin. Different people, different amounts. But it makes you happy, it makes you sleepy, and it's, you know, it's a happy chemical. If you do MDMA, serotonin.
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Are you kidding me?
Dixon's violin is going on.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm running a little bit. I mean, it's timed. It was a 29-minute presentation.
I'm sorry. We haven't been running really late.
It's okay. I will do my best. No worries. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is known as the cuddle hormone. This gets released when you are. This is a long-term bonding sort of thing. It's not like a sexy sort of thing. Long-term bonding, family. Oxytocin is released when women breastfeed their children. And it's something that is present in a lot of longer-term relationships. Excuse me. There's less norepinephrine, less dopamine, a lot of oxytocin, a lot of security and love. Also, MDMA. MDMA, which also known as Molly, also known as ecstasy when it's cut with crap, used to be used in by marital counselors in, marital counseling, and it inhibits your oxytocin and serotonin inhibitors, which makes you as happy as you would be if you didn't have those inhibitors. and it lets you connect with people better. So, you know, don't do drugs, kids, they're bad. Dopamine. Dopamine is the super important one. Okay, so what is dopamine? Dopamine is what you get when you first bone with someone, and it is what is responsible for NRE, which is new relationship energy. That's another non-monogamous term, and it's that like glow that people have when they're in your relationship. They're just like, ah. So that's caused by dopamine. It causes euphoria. It's the reason that we like sex. It's the reason we do drugs. Well, it's cocaine. It's cocaine. It's dopamine. And it's also the reason that people get gambling addictions, because they get a dopamine rush when they gamble, and they get addicted to that because dopamine is addicting. And too much of it can be linked to schizophrenia. So most of the effective schizophrenia medication we have work by inhibiting your dopamine production. I mean, schizophrenia is obviously really complicated and it's not as simple as that, but too much dopamine also bad. And dopamine is also behind what is known as the Coolidge effect. Now, the Coolidge effect gets its name from an old joke. The president, Calvin Coolidge, just gets elected into office. His wife is being shown the tour of the place, and they pass the yard, and there's chickens fucking in the yard, and she goes, oh my, and clutches her pearls. And the aide that's giving her the walk around, he goes, oh, Mrs. Coolidge, I'm so sorry that you had to see that, that's awful, completely inappropriate. And she goes, does the rooster do that every day? And he goes, oh, yes, ma'am, he does this every day, 12 times a day. She goes, oh, tell that to Mr. Coolidge. Storms off. And so the next day, the aide is walking the president through the, walking with the president, and they walk past the yard, and the rooster is fucking with a hen. And it's, Mr. President, your wife wanted me to tell you that that rooster fornicates every day, 12 times a day. Sir. And the president goes, well, with the same hen? It's a different hen every time. Oh, well, tell that to Mrs. Coolidge. So, what is the Coolidge effect? The Coolidge effect is that the unfortunate truth of the matter is that sex with the same partner over and over again becomes less and less exciting and fun every time you do it. The reason for this is that when you are with a novel mate in a novel sexual situation, you release a whole flood of dopamine. And every time you fuck them after that, a little bit less and less dopamine is released every time. This is really sad. But there's ways of fighting back against it, because the fact of the matter is, your brain is really easily tricked. So you can have sex with a new partner, which is cool, and then your system floods with dopamine, and then that can actually be used to strengthen your pre-existing relationship, because you can go back to your partner of 5 years, and you have all this dopamine coursing around, and you can just channel it towards them. Because it's not like a light switch, it doesn't go off as soon as you leave the bedroom. But you don't have to fuck other people if you don't want to, because you can experiment with BDSM, and you can experiment with fetishes, and you can have your partner put on a wig, and they'll look like a different person, and your brain is stupid, it can get tricked easily. And so dopamine can flood through the system, and you can, again, like sort of do that, jolt of life, it's alive, to the dopamine in your relationship, which is good. So that was I didn't explain how to do all of these things. I didn't explain to you how you do kink and how you do non-monogamy. That's a whole other talk, and it's a really long talk. But the short version is communication. So learn to communicate, state your sexual boundaries, state your needs, so on and so forth. And I've given you a quick brain chemistry overview, again, not as in-depth as I would have liked. But go forth, start a sex-positive revolution, spread the word, end heteronormativity, fight for greater acceptance of kink, explore non-monogamy and consider it. Don't fall into these outdated bullshit narratives that harm you as a person and society as a whole. My name again is Anastasia Krylov. That's my email address up there if you want to email me and tell me that I was just like staggeringly wrong about something. I would love to hear from you. No, I would, because if I'm wrong, I want to fix it. And that's my talk. Nobody's gesturing for me to get off the stage, but I feel like I should.